And welcome to the Briefing Room. I'm Devin Dwyer on this very busy Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us. Joined by our senior correspondent, Terry Moran, our investigative reporter, Trish Turner, who's been working the Hill. Great to have them here as well. So we have a stalemate in the Senate over the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. Overnight, the accuser, Christine Blasey Ford, said she won't testify now on Monday. She prefers the FBI to take a look at this first. The committee, though, Trish, bending over backwards to get her to come in on Monday privately. They've offered to go to California. And you just heard from Chuck Grassley on the Hill, who said this.
We've not heard anything further than last night, but we're reaching out, and we're not going to cancel any hearing until the last minute. I don't know what the last minute is, but until the last minute, in hopes that she'll take us up. And we've gone beyond what we did the first day of just having the hearing she asked for, the open hearing she asked for, because we heard she might not want to come in that environment. So we offered one more closed session or two ways of doing it by transcript.
All right, so the hearing is still on for now, although we don't have a confirmed guest. And Susan Collins of Maine, one of the key senators in all of this, an advocate for women, has also just spoken out on the latest developments. Let's put that up. She was giving an interview to a local Maine radio station. She says, much to my surprise, it now appears that Christine Blasey Ford, is turning down all three options by the committee, even though her attorney said earlier this week she would come testify. I just don't understand why the hearing should not go forth. Trish, Republicans sort of unanimous here in saying they should have a hearing and they should have a vote next week.
Yeah, they're in a really difficult position because they extended the invite before they ever checked to see that Dr. Ford would appear. So now what do? One thing that we understand they won't do is have the hearing and have an empty seat in front of them. They understand as well as we do that the optics are really bad about that. But this is really hard for them. It's a difficult position. You have to figure out, by the end of the day, at the end of the week, how to thread the needle on this. And
they're in a very difficult spot. The president weighing in on this, too, just a few hours ago, on his way to North Carolina, says he's very eager to hear from Christine Blasey Ford as well. Take a listen.
I'd really want to see her. I really would want to see what she has to say. But I want to give it all the time they need. They've already given it time. They've delayed a major hearing. There's no more just about, look, I think he's an extraordinary man. I think he's a man of great intellect, as I've been telling you, and he has an unblemished record. This is a very tough thing for him and his family. And we want to get it over with. At the same time, we want to give tremendous amounts of time. If she shows up, that would be wonderful. If she doesn't show up, that would be unfortunate.
So pressure from Republicans, Terry, but Democrats really digging in here. They don't want Dr. Ford to be subjected to the treatment Anita Hill got back in '91. And in fact, Dianne Feinstein, the ranking Democrat on the committee, actually just tweeted moments ago. She says that she thinks there needs to be an FBI investigation here first. She stands by Dr. Ford's decision not to appear. There you see it, 27 years ago, the FBI, she said, did look into the allegations. Do they have a case, Terry?
They do. Right now, this is basically set up to be a swearing contest where the accuser, Christine Blasey Ford, goes against the Supreme Court nominee, and that's it. That's all the Republicans want to hear.
They didn't want any other witnesses.
That's right.
Unlike Anita Hill.
Unlike Anita Hill, there were 22 witnesses on both sides. There were witnesses who were in the office. They never noticed any upset on her part or any untoward interactions for him. And then on her side, there were people who said, yeah, she told me about it. So the mystery got deeper as it was. But right now, I think Democrats have a sense, if there is so much time, as the president is saying, and that is a playbook out of Anita Hill. Notice that the Republicans, neither the president nor anyone, was saying, let's get this thing done. They insulted Anita Hill. They said she was a scorned woman or somebody with erotomania. None of that. Even President Trump, who's usually not very disciplined, has been on message on this because they think that this is a way to just get this nominee through. Whether or not they'll be able to gut that out is anybody's
And Democrats, going back to Democrats, they see obviously a political advantage in letting this slow way down. In fact, we heard from Anita Hill this morning on Good Morning America said, hit the pause button here. And there seems to be a pretty coordinated strategy to do just that.
On both sides, because really at the end of the day, you know, everybody is mocking the Republicans, and rightly so in some ways, for saying, look, think of how bad this is for Kavanaugh. It's terrible for both of them. These are two human beings, right? We lose track of it. It becomes a game show when it gets to be this way. They have families, they have children, they have friends, reputations and careers. It's not going to end well for one of them, right? And so the Democrats are saying, let's do this right. And I think one of the things you're seeing here, maybe, is that both sides are looking to shape the inquiry. Judge Kavanaugh doesn't want them going into all the details of his youth. Who would want that, right? And I think perhaps on the other side, Christine Blasey Ford, who first revealed this in detail at a couples therapy session in a court of law. The next question would be, why were you in couples therapy? I don't think she wants her whole private life. Who would?
Right. We know she's had death threats. We know she's had to move her family basically into hiding. So this is nothing that you step forward with lightly.
Yeah, let's bring in our senior congressional correspondent for a little more on that. Mary Bruce has joined us from the Senate. Mary, to pick up on what Trish was just saying, you've heard from Chuck Grassley today. You've been working the hallways. The Senate's out, but there are a number of members still there. Chuck Grassley and others, Republicans bending over backwards. They don't want to appear like they are forcing her, strong-arming Dr. Ford to appear, but it's pretty clear that's what they want her to do.
Yeah, like the overarching message from Republicans up here to Christine Blasey Ford is essentially, look, show up on Monday, talk to either investigators publicly, privately, appear before the committee in an open or closed session, or else we're headed towards a vote. Look, Republicans are making the point, as you mentioned, that look, they're going to great lengths to give her an opportunity to tell her side of the story. She's, her lawyer says that's something she wants to do. The Republicans say they're giving her that opportunity, but they also aren't saying, look, we're going to delay a hearing, we're going to extend the timing here, because at the end of the day, Republicans want to get this going. And I did actually just ask one Republican member of the committee, Senator John Kennedy, how can he go ahead and vote? Does he feel that he can make a decision here without having heard from Professor Ford if she doesn't come up and speak Monday and you do move to that vote? And his answer was essentially, well, look, we had a confirmation hearing. We did have a chance to ask him questions. And if she's not going to come up here and speak to us or speak to our investigators, well, then we have no choice but to move ahead with a vote and make a decision based on what we already know from those confirmation hearings. So, Republicans are trying to appear that they're, giving her every chance here. And Democrats, of course, on the other side are playing the other side of the coin here. And many Republicans would say that they're trying to delay this because they have a political interest in pushing off any vote here. This is Capitol Hill. There's always politics at play here, of course. And in the meantime, everyone on the Hill is just stuck. Washington is stuck, and a lot of lawmakers are frustrated. There's a lot of confusion up here about what will come next. Do you have a hearing just with Kavanaugh? Republican leaders don't seem to think that makes much sense. At least those that we've talked to don't seem to think that makes much sense. And of course, so much of this comes down to that handful of Republicans who have been so vocal about their reservations here, right? Your Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Jeff Flake, Bob Corker, and they are all growing increasingly frustrated too, imploring really Christine Blasey Ford to come up, show up, answer their questions so that they can try and make the most informed decision possible.
All right, Mary Bruce, thank you so much. We know you'll be tracking the stalemate into the weekend with your reporting. I want to bring in someone now who knows Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, has known her for 40 years, actually. Samantha Gary is here in Washington with us. She is one of the women who signed a letter supporting Dr. Ford, formerly of the Holton Arms School in Maryland. Samantha Gary, thank you so much for being here, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So I know you haven't spoken directly to Dr. Ford since this all has broken, but understand you've been in close touch with some folks around her.
Yes.
What are you hearing about how she's doing?
Well, Christine is a very strong woman, and she's holding up as well as can be expected given the circumstances. It's a traumatic time for her.
And tell us a little bit more about her. We've just seen just a handful of pictures of her, some from that 1980s yearbook, the one picture from her Stanford profile. Help us sort of fill out a picture of the Christine that you knew back then and know today.
Well, Chrissy came to Holton in 7th grade. We all went to school together for 6 years. It's a very small class. There's only about 65 of us. We all got to know each other very well, and she was just very well liked across the board. Very popular with within Holton as well as other schools in the area. She was engaged in various sports, managed the basketball team. So, she was one of those cheerful, easy to like people. But at the same time, as many Holton girls, she was very smart, very hardworking. Clearly, those are qualities that she kept as she went forward in her adult life. As I've said, she's now a biostatistician, and she has achieved at a very high level in her profession. And I think that speaks a lot about her commitment.
It certainly does, and it's no small thing to be a biostatistician or a PhD at a school like Stanford, no doubt.
Right.
Give us a sense of a little bit more about what the school environment was like. Holton Arms, we've heard a lot about Georgetown Prep. How did those two schools interact with each other? Were you often at joint events together? Were there a lot of cross-socialization?
There's a lot of cross-socialization. And, one thing I think people don't understand about the Washington private schools is we all grew up in politics, essentially. Our class, if you were to look across our classmate, across the people who we were in school with, in all of those schools at that time, our parents were in high levels of government, in the media. The person that was making you a peanut butter sandwich on a Saturday afternoon was also happened to be the ambassador to someplace. So, for us, we've always seen all of this as a very personal thing. You spoke just a minute ago about, these are human beings, and this has a very deep human impact. And I think that's something that we all might appreciate more than the average person, because this has never been just a circus for us. It's been very personal. It's been family.
And no doubt very difficult for her in light of her desire, we've heard, to remain private initially here before this leaked out. I want to ask you about a woman who claims to have been a classmate of yours, a class dean of Dr. Ford's at the time at Holton Arms, a woman by the name of Christina King Miranda. She tweeted today that she was a graduate from Holton Arms. I think we have the tweet. She also knew Brett Kavanaugh and Mark Judge, two of the men involved in the alleged party. And she says the incident was spoken about for days afterwards in school. Do you recall that? Did you hear anything about that? Was this something that, after it took place, was sort of an open secret, if you will, in the hallways at Holton Arms?
I have no recollection of that, and Miss King was, I believe, class of '83. She would have been a year behind us. It's really my understanding that this wasn't something that Chrissy had spoken to other people about. So I don't know much about that that tweet and what's behind that.
And you did know Brett Kavanaugh. You've been talking a little bit about that today in some of your interviews. Did he have a reputation? How did you know him, given that you were at a different school?
Oh, well, I knew him because I dated one of his good friends at the time, and I was in the Oklahoma, or the Georgetown Prep production of Oklahoma, and taught the football team at Prep how to dance for that. So that was an interesting moment in my high school year.
But what were your impressions of him? Was he a bit of a character? Was he a heavy drinker?
It was a long time ago. Those guys were a very tight-knit group of friends. They were very loyal to each other. They partied as hard as you might expect teenage boys at that age to party. I don't think that's really changed. I also don't think that's unique to private schools in the D.C. area.
Sure, and it was a long time ago, 36 years, as many Republicans on the Hill have been pointing out. I want to ask you about something Senator Orrin Hatch told us yesterday. He said that he had spoken with Brett Kavanaugh this week. and that the judge told him that perhaps Dr. Ford is, quote, mixed up. He said she may be mistaking him for somebody else. Do you think that's possible here?
That's not possible. That's just not possible. I find that very, frankly, it makes me angry. It's really a way of dismissing her and suggesting that her memory isn't clear. I think when you have someone's hand over your mouth and you think that you might die by accident, you know who you're dealing with.
Certainly, one would imagine if that was the case, it would be searing in your mind.
Yes.
Susan Collins, just a few minutes ago, as we were talking about, said she was a bit surprised that Dr. Ford isn't willing to come forward this week, even privately, and share her experience with the committee. Does that surprise you at all, based on what you know about Christine, that she wouldn't even desire, at least at this stage, to talk about these things in private?
My sense is she's thinking this through. I mean, her name just got attached to this on Sunday night. I think she needs some time to think about this, and that's exactly what she doesn't have. I think everybody has to remember that what she asked for was confidentiality. She didn't ask to be a political football in this. She felt that she was a private citizen bringing a very important piece of information that had not come through in the other vetting process to the table, but that alone was a difficult conversation, to have to speak on this in such a tremendous public forum and at such a tremendously important time for our country. I think everyone needs to take a deep breath and take a step back and just really think this through before we just go charging ahead with our agenda, whatever agenda that is on either side.
And before I let you go, Samantha, thank you so much. What do you think she'll do come Monday? Do you think that Christine, you said, just needs some time to give this some thought? Do you think she'll come around to meeting with the committee privately, as Senator Grassley and others have hoped? And do you think there's any sense here, any indication here that she's coordinating with the Democrats in this?
There's no indication. I have no indication or no information that she's coordinating with the Democrats. So if that's the case, that would very much surprise me. I think that her sole coordination was really just bringing this forward, and it so happens that the Democrats are in her district. So, if I were in her shoes, I would very much want to have some time to think this through and to understand from the committee what exactly they need to understand from her beyond what she's already told them. And it seems to me what she's requested in terms of investigation, where they would actually talk to more people and bring more information to it, seems very reasonable.
We shall see. Samantha Gary, thank you so much for your time. Very generous of you to come in. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. Terry, what do you make of her testimony about Dr. Ford?
Well, it's the kind of thing that we would hear in a more fulsome hearing, where there would have been an investigation, there'd be character witnesses, people who knew these people at that time. I thought she seemed very fair-minded and even-handed about the whole thing. I don't know if it helps people make up their minds. I think at the end of the day, for the decision makers in something like this, it really is, at bottom, the credibility of the individual. And that's why this process is such a terrible way to do it.
Out in the open, adjudicated with politicians, with agendas,
partisan.
as she said.
It's a no-win situation. I don't know how she gets out of this.
Very
any of
difficult.
them, for that matter.
And not just her. You mentioned earlier, these are both human beings. Brett Kavanaugh, a human being in this as well, 2 young daughters. We know, we've heard that that's been taking a toll. I want to bring in White House correspondent Karen Travers, who has been tracking that side of the story, how Judge Kavanaugh is said to be feeling and thinking about all of this. Karen, you have some reporting on what he's been doing. He spent the last 2 days at the White House. What are you hearing about what he's up to today?
Yeah, he wasn't at the White House today. Wasn't expected to be here, Devin, but Brett Kavanaugh was at the White House on Monday and Tuesday, huddling with administration officials. And a source that is close to the nomination process tells ABC that Brett Kavanaugh is personally shaken by these accusations, but that he is unflinching and firm in his denials. We were asking, how is he going to do if he does have to go before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Monday and face what could be a very tough interrogation? A lot of questions about his personal life, how he behaved in high school, and of course these very specific allegations by Christine Blasey Ford. This official told us that Kavanaugh will be very, very believable.
Is there any talk there, Karen, about potentially pulling this nomination? Has the rumor mill started to churn? Is the president privately wringing his hands about getting on to someone else? What are you hearing on that front?
There was something that President Trump said today that really struck us here. He was speaking to reporters on the South Lawn, and he had said several times that he really wanted to hear Christine Blasey Ford tell her story. He was saying she should go up to Capitol Hill, testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee. And he says if she does that, and if she made a very credible case, a credible appearance, he said, we'll have a decision to make. That was notable. Was he opening the door just a little bit to the possibility that Brett Kavanaugh's nomination could be in jeopardy? We've asked, we haven't gotten clarity on that just yet, but certainly it was the president's own words saying, we'll have a decision to make. Decision about what? Very interesting and something to keep an eye on.
All right, indeed, we know you'll be on the case. Let's shift gears a little bit. There was a lot of news this morning, one of those impromptu press conferences on the South Lawn but before the president went down to the Carolinas. Karen, and the president is ratcheting up the rhetoric again about his attorney general, just absolutely extraordinary. We know that he has soured on Jeff Sessions, but today basically eviscerating the AG. It seems like it's only a matter of time before he fires him.
Devin, this started in an interview that the president did. We're listening to. This started in an interview the president did with the Hill newspaper, where he said, I don't have an attorney general. Just a striking comment from the president. And he was asked on the South Lawn of the White House to explain. What did he mean by that he doesn't have an AG?
All right, let's take a listen.
I'm disappointed in the attorney general for numerous reasons, but we have an attorney general. I'm disappointed in the attorney general for many reasons, and you understand that.
Disappointed. I think it's really just a matter of not if he goes, but how quietly he goes, Terry. I think this is somebody who could have a lot to say on the way out the door.
Well, he could also just resign. I mean, if your boss said in public to the world, day after day, you suck, you'd probably leave. I mean, how much humiliation can a man take? And he does have the authority to dismiss him at any time. It's the strangest bedfellows in American government I've seen
anything like
in a long time.
One has to imagine the morale over there, Trish. It's Justice Department. You're plugged in with folks. I mean,
it's
to
not
see
just,
their guy beat
and
up
it's not
like
just
this.
President Trump who's picking at Sessions. I mean, he's picking at everyone in this department. So it's taken a beating. Let's face it. This all comes down to the Russia investigation and Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who was the first supporter of candidate Trump in the Senate. It was a huge boon to his candidacy. He decided to recuse himself almost right out of the gate, was under a lot of pressure, but he was a top surrogate for Trump on the campaign. So he was in a situation where he almost had to recuse on anything involving the Mueller investigation, but that has really stuck in the president's craw, and he can't get over it. And he just feels like he has this quote unquote witch hunt that's after him, that dogs him every day, and that's what's truly at the base of this fight.
Coming attractions after the midterm election, I think probably the first order of business for President Trump.
Indeed.
And before we go, let's bring Karen Travers back in at the White House. Karen, the president on his third hurricane devastation tour down not only in North Carolina, but a surprise visit, unannounced visit to South Carolina.
Yeah, the president was getting an aerial tour of the damage in the North and South Carolina area. The president was really eager to get down there, talk to state and local officials, get a sense on the ground of how the recovery effort is going. Devin, of course, the president for days has been forcefully defending the preparation and the response by the federal government. He says they've been doing a fantastic job, so much heroism and bravery. Today, he also spoke at greater length about the victims of this flood. Unfortunately, there's the hurricane. unfortunately, there have been fatalities. The president said their hearts go out to the victims and their families. God bless them, and that the government will always be there for them. So the president, of course, trying to emphasize that the work his administration has been doing has been great, but had to acknowledge that, sadly, people have died because of this storm, too.
Yeah, at least 35 dead across the Carolinas, and a death toll that he will have to address at some point, amidst all the controversy of the very high 3,000 dead in Puerto Rico. Certainly something to keep following. Karen Travers, thank you so much for your reporting. We'll kick it today with some news out of North Korea. And Terry, you have covered that region. You were following the summit a few months ago in Singapore. Today, something extraordinary. We saw the South Korean president trying to jumpstart these U.S.-North Korean talks by traveling to Pyongyang. A lot of imagery, a lot of pageantry, a lot of parades, but still no clear indication to me that there's been a breakthrough in denuking.
Well, you know, it seems to me you're right there. So that we haven't had a great big commitment at all from North Korea. But the show that we're watching, and that's what you're centering on, that's part of what's happening. It may be that showman Donald Trump and showman Kim Jong-un, that right, nobody puts on a better parade in the world right now, but that they're shifting the way they might resolve this problem from a brinksmanship, either you denuke or we go to war, to let's have the show and let's see how we can warm up the temperature here a little bit. We hear very frequently from President Trump how much he likes Kim Jong-un. And today you did get something, at least the South Korean president did, which is that Kim Jong-un said they'll dismantle a missile engine.
Yongbong.
Well, Yongbong perhaps, yep. But right away, the missile engine factory, which has caused the Americans a great deal of angst. Now, they already have built the missiles, so they may not need as much anymore. But maybe the model, which we've been working on, which is put a gun to North Korea's head in the form of sanctions and the threat of war, or else, is being replaced by the art of the deal, which has a lot more show in it.
And the president had something to say about that today. I think we have the sound. Let's hear about this art of the deal with North Korea.
We're making tremendous progress with respect to North Korea. Prior to becoming president, it looked like we were going to war with North Korea. And now we have a lot of progress. We've gotten our prisoners back. We're getting our remains back. They continue to come in. A lot of tremendous things, but very importantly, no missile testing, no nuclear testing.
So as long as there aren't the show in the skies, he's a happy camper. And maybe we'll have a joint Olympics in the Koreas in 2032. That was one of the small headlines out today that Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in agreed to put in an application to host the 2032 Olympics. So that could be quite something to follow.
Hope springs eternal.
Hope springs eternal, indeed. Thank you so much for joining us here in the briefing room on this Wednesday with Terry Moran, Trish Turner. Great to have you with us. Stay tuned here on ABC News Live for more coverage. A lot of big stories this week. We'll see you next time.